Mysteries of the Mind, here with your host, Sarah Soderlund. And tonight it's extremely exciting for me because we have a guest joining us. And I know I don't usually do guests, but this one in particular, I had listened to him on a few other shows and had come across a few of his books on my bookshelf. And I thought, you know what? 2016, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to trust other individuals to join me in the Matrix. And his banter was absolutely well-spoken. And so if you are someone who's interested in ufology, MUFON, aliens, alien abduction regression, for those of you tuning in my psychology demographic, you know that's something I do frequently as a hypnotherapist. Well, Mr. Preston Dennett is the man of the hour. So before I bring him on here, I want to just share with you, for those of you joining us online, either through the TuneIn app or through the IPBN-FM.com with our live chat, you can also go to PrestonDennett.weebly.com, and that's Preston, Preston, Dennett, Dennett.weebly.com, and there you're going to find a link to all of his amazing accomplishments thus far. And he's still a young dude. Actually began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986, and that was when he discovered that his family, friends, and coworkers were having dramatic and unexplained encounters. Sound familiar? So since then, he's interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and he's investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomenon. He is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, as we often mention here on Mysteries of the Mind. But he's also a ghost hunter, paranormal researcher, and author of more than 18 books, which that just blows my mind, and more than 100 articles online that you'll find with topics from UFOs to other paranormal phenomenon. They've appeared in numerous magazines, Fate Magazine, Atlantis Rising, MUFON, UFO Journals, Nexus, Paranormal Magazine, and just the list goes on. But his writings began translating into several different languages, German, Portuguese, Chinese, Icelandic. So for any of you joining us across the globe, he might sound familiar. Or if you've been watching any radio, television programs on MUFON or ufology, you may have seen him there as well. Currently, he resides and presents in Los Angeles or California area. But without further ado, I want to bring on Mr. Preston Dennett. Mr. Dennett, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad that you could join us this evening. I'm hoping that bio, that's a pretty heavy bio. Is there anything new, though, that you can add to it? Because you seem like a pretty accomplished young man.
Well, yeah, there's another book on the way, actually, and another one coming after that. So I'm keeping busy for sure.
Man, okay, so the hour always goes quick here on Mysteries of the Mind, and throughout this week on our social networking sites, from Facebook to Twitter to even Instagram, I've had just an array of questions coming in that I do hope to get to and ask for you and for those joining us on Periscope Live now. But I want to hit on some of probably the most important questions and just really pick your mind there. So, as I mentioned, you've written more than 18 books. Like you just said, you've already got another one coming out this year. You're working on future publications. What would you say, because I actually have been reading through them this past week, and I couldn't pick one in particular, so I'm interested in what your thoughts are on the most bizarre story that you've come across to date. Right?
That's a good question, because there's certainly a lot of them. Bizarre. Well, it's hard to say. There was one lady I interviewed. Her story really shocked me, and I often think of it. She had experiences with UFOs pretty much her whole life, including close-up encounters with these objects, missing time, this sort of thing. But she had one experience which I'd never heard anything quite like it, honestly. She was driving her motorcycle through I forget the name of the mountain range. It's on there on the East Coast in New Jersey or that area. But at any rate, it was late at night. This was some years ago. And on a remote road, driving her motorcycle when she crashed and was damaged the bike to the extent that she was not able to start it again. This was an old-fashioned motorcycle with the kind of Kickstarter. And she was pretty worried because this was a remote area. It was middle of the night, pretty cold, and she was in a bad situation. And this is when these figures appeared. She never saw a UFO. She saw these two humanoids, I'll call them. She said they actually looked very much like a normal person, except for the fact that they had large, dark eyes, were wearing jumpsuits or nothing. She couldn't even really tell. Bald heads, but if they had worn a hat and sunglasses, she says they probably could have passed on the street. At any rate, she steps back because these guys walk up to her. There's two of them, and pick up her motorcycle, and one of them bends down and starts straightening out this kickstand, the Kickstarter, and fixes the bike. They set it, they prop it up. I know this is really strange, but there's a number of cases like this in the literature, and they stepped back. She's pretty, shaken up at this point, and jumps on the bike and doesn't look back, just starts it and takes off. And she calls them her friends. She had an experience when she was a child where she was woke up in the middle of the night and found herself in a field, and this UFO is basically chasing her through the field, and suddenly she's struck by a beam of light and sucked up into it, and that's the last thing she remembers except waking up the next morning, and her bed is full of sticks and leaves and all these things. So she's had a lot of experiences. But
now, for one thing, I love that story because it's kind of positive, which I think in most situations when you're coming across a humanoid on a, deserted path out in the mountain range somewhere at night,
right.
You're doing pretty good statistically to have a positive experience. But what I love, though, and what I love most, I think, about the alien topic is these reoccurring things, themes, messages, correlations, whatever word you want to use. And even with that story, there's she's had a childhood experience. So that leads me to asking you, have you had a childhood experience that you think has brought you into this adulthood position of studying ufology, or do you think that that's a common theme you see most frequently with abductees or experiencers, that they've had a childhood experience?
Yeah, with people who are experiencers, absolutely. It's pretty much the rule, and it's one of the questions I definitely ask people. And I have to tell you, Sarah, I have searched my past, my memories, my childhood for anything that might explain my obsessive interest in this, and I don't really have a whole lot of no UFO sightings. I can't find anything really. So it does run in my family. I do know that. My sister-in-law had a face-to-face encounter with gray-type ETs. Her son had an encounter with his best friend when he was a child where an apparent ET came into his bedroom. He also had a sighting. My other sister-in-law has also had sightings and face-to-face encounters. But me, no, I don't know. No, since I started investigating this stuff, I have had a number of sightings and perhaps one or two visitations. Definitely a lot of weird dreams. But no, I've never been taken on board. Not that I remember. I've never had missing time. I can't explain it. I don't know.
You're unique. Do you feel like, without going too far down the rabbit hole, do you feel like, because at least with those who I have worked with in the past, we do like hypnosis, we do regression, we try and pick through maybe repressed memories. Do you feel like maybe it could have been something traumatic that you just aren't prepared to recall, but that you have this yearning to continue, or this curiosity to pick through ufology stories?
Yeah,
because
it's certainly possible. Yeah,
it's so cool. To me, that's very fascinating.
I just don't know. I don't really want to go under hypnosis open-ended unless I can point to a specific incident. Right.
Right.
Where I would, like to investigate it. But, I'm going to leave it open to a possibility because I do have a real strong obsessive interest in it. I don't really know where it comes from.
I love that. Well, I love that because I think in some ways it allows you to be unbiased, where when you have people who have traumatic childhood experiences, when they're empathizing with others, that empathizing already puts them in a position to be a little biased. So I think as far as remaining objective, that makes you pretty unique. So I like that. Now,
yeah,
kind
I
of
was
jumping.
really skeptical of this stuff too. Very skeptical.
Well,
so when I found out it was real, it was not easy. It was being hit like a ton of bricks.
Well, and now this leads me to my next question, actually. So that's your psychic intuition is strong, Mr. Dennett. So one of our listeners this week had asked, were you ever a skeptic? And if so, what was the occurrence that you feel changed your perspective into the, Mully and Skolder's I want to believe?
Right. Well, I'm very skeptical my whole life. I remember watching In Search Of and a couple of other programs where they mentioned UFOs and kind of just laughed at it and didn't think much of it. And hearing accounts about people who'd seen ETs, and I thought, well, they've got eyes, nose, and a mouth. I mean, come on, this is too Star Trek. I'm thinking aliens have to have tentacles or something, that's different. And so I was very skeptical, and it wasn't until I can actually point to a very specific incident.
Perfect.
It was a news report. This was in December of 1986 or November, when this guy comes on the news, Tom Brokaw, or one of these guys, Dan Rather, evening news, starts talking about this UFO sighting over Alaska. And it was all very tongue-in-cheek, almost no information, really, that they shared, other than this pilot saw a UFO and it followed his plane. Now, I later found out it followed his plane for nearly an hour. He tried to evade it. It still followed him. It was caught on his onboard radar as well as ground radar. There were other witnesses. So it's a great case, but none of that information was in the news report. They just kind of laughed nervously about it and moved on. I thought, my God, this pilot is crazy. I can't believe he's doing this. He's lying, he's hallucinating, he's misperceiving. I don't know what's going on. But this is where it all went into the twilight zone for me. I started asking the people at work, what do they think of this pilot? My friends and family. And I got hit by a ton of bricks. I'm going to say at least 25% of the people, within my circle had not only some sightings, but really dramatic encounters. One lady had missing time. Another lady had a face-to-face encounter. Another friend had a missing time encounter. But my brother had chased a UFO with his two friends. All these people had witnesses with them, too. I assumed people who saw UFOs were alone. That's absolutely not true. Most cases, people do have witnesses. So, yeah, it was a real, real shock. I couldn't believe it. I started picking up books expecting to find an answer, and instead I found out that this subject had been studied, for almost 50 years at least, and still hadn't broken into the mainstream. I felt scandalized. That's what
Right.
It was not good news. This wasn't taught in school, and there was this alien invasion going on, and it seemed like nobody was talking about it. So yeah, that's what got me into it, and I started writing articles, and I joined all the UFO groups. I joined, and I bought all the books and magazines, and just have never looked back.
Dun, dun, dun. I love that. I love that. I love that it is, it was predominantly those firsthand accounts and talking with people face to face that kind of sucked you in. I know for me, I was in college, my freshman year of college, and a professor of mine, when I had explained that I did paranormal investigations and that I was majoring in psychology, this amazing professor of mine recommended that I talk to a Dr. Leo Sprinkle, someone that he had graduated with and that was working in alternative psychology, and that was going to be my final in the class, was to do an interview of Dr. Leo Sprinkle. And he was the man that really sucked me into MUFON and aliens and cattle mutilations and kind of strange otherworldly phenomenon. And of course, MUFON, which I know that you work hand in hand with, was a really great reference and networking tool for me in the Kansas City area. And here in the Minneapolis area, I've yet to work with their chapter, but they seem to be very, very active. And so it's neat. It's neat because for those of you listening, very much like Mr. Dennett here, if you aren't sure, if you're a fence rider, for me and obviously for Preston as well, the most believable and the most I don't know, maybe the word is intimate ways of learning about it is to just ask people, and you'll be surprised how many people have had encounters. I think that that's neat that the people around you felt open enough to share that. Sometimes that's not always the case.
You know, I asked them, I mean, why did you keep this secret from me? Because these are people I knew and trusted. It was tough. I always tell people now, if you're skeptical, ask people you know, that you trust, people that you know are not going to lie to you, and I think you'll get a real surprise. A lot of people are keeping this stuff secret.
Well, now, so for those in the paranormal realm, I know when they're like, man, Sarah, I really want to have an experience. I'm a skeptic and I want to go somewhere and be shoved by a ghost, that there's recommendations that we may or may not send their way, like a haunted location or a person that's got a lot of issues happening in and or around them. But with aliens, that's a little more difficult. When you have someone who says, hey, Preston, you know what you're talking about, and I want to experience aliens. What do? Do I put out like a bat signal in the sky, or do I do an alien dance out under the trees, or do I go to the UFO ranch? Like, where do I go, or what do I do to have an alien encounter? What do you tell those people?
I'm going to write a book about this, actually.
Ooh, good.
In the works. It's called Making Contact, 10 Methods to Initiate Your Own UFO Encounter. And, it is absolutely possible. I've done it. I've actually been able to bring, Encounters, the TV show. I brought them to a UFO hotspot and called down a UFO. And also the Learning Channel. I brought other people out on these UFO hunts. And there are different things you can do. I think one of the best methods is going to a very active area. And I'm going to say pretty much every state has some area that's got a disproportionately large number of sightings. We call them flap areas. And like in New York, it's upstate in the Hudson Valley area. Here in California, it's the Santa Monica Mountains. There's all these areas that seem to have a lot of activity. And if you go out there and you are, very disciplined and do it for a couple of weeks, going out there late at night, bringing flashlights and things like this, it's definitely possible to initiate an encounter. The thing is, with ETs, they communicate telepathically. And this is the rule when people are taken on board. They communicate through telepathy. And if you put out thoughts, saying, I want to have contact, they can hear this. And I know how this sounds. I know it's very Twilight Zone-y, but...
You sound crazy, Preston. You sound crazy.
I know.
No.
But it works.
Wrong show.
That's
You sound
thing.
normal.
It absolutely works. I joined this group called CSETI, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which was headed by Stephen Greer.
Yeah.
He got really, well known doing this. This is how he kind of entered the field, and he formed groups across the United States. I was part of the first group here in LA, and there was 100 of us who, took his lecture, and maybe 50 or 100 of us went out there one night, right after he lectured, and this is right over the San Fernando Valley. We're overlooking a very large population center. And no sooner had we gotten out there and kind of sat in a circle and started doing these meditations when someone shouts out, "What's that?" And we all look up, and I've taken a lot of astronomy classes. I could not identify what this thing was. It wasn't a satellite. It wasn't a star, plane, or it was this blob of light. And it was straight up at the zenith. It must have been at least 30,000, 40,000 feet up there, and huge. And we're talking just half the size of the full moon, the apparent size. So, and it moved across the sky. And we went the next night and had more sightings. And we ended up going out for a couple of years there and had a number of really interesting sightings. So, yeah, it's absolutely possible to call down UFOs.
Okay, so that, for those of you listening, I don't know if it gives you the willies or not, that even just listening to us now might be sending up that little mental beams to the men in space. And if you're just joining us, we have Mr. Preston Dennett. Now, we have a few minutes before we cut to our break for the evening, but I wanted to ask, because we just have a ton of questions coming out for you, where can people find you online if they want to learn about Preston Dennett and aliens and alien contact? Where can they find you?
Probably my website is the best way to reach me. It's actually my name. If you Google my name, it'll take you right to it. The actual website address is prestondennett.weebly.com. Yeah, my name is 2 N's, 2 T's. And I have all my books there, excerpts, and you can contact me through my website. And I always love to hear from people if they've got a story to share or a question or anything.
Right, and you were really, because that's how I contacted you, is I had heard you on, I think it was Dark 30 and a few other radio programs, and I was listening, I thought, man, you're well-spoken, you're friendly and approachable, and then when I went to your website, I was wondering, okay, is this just somebody who is a self-proclaimed ufologist, or what are we talking about here? And then when I looked over some of your books, UFOs over Nevada, UFOs over New Mexico, UFOs over New York, you've got the series that are kind of geographically related to locations. You can find one near you. But then I actually have one of your books, and I don't know where I got it, but I have the Mysteries, Legends, and Unexplained Phenomenon of UFO and Aliens by Preston Dennett. And I was looking on my bookshelf, and I was like, holy cow, that book looks familiar. I have that book. But then you keep looking, and on your website, that prestondennett.weebly.com, I mean, you scroll down, you've got UFO healings, you've got 1 in 40, you've got, the Los Angeles area, and it just goes on and on and on. And here in the second half, we're actually going to jump on one of the other books I have a copy of, which is your Mysteries, Legends, and Unexplained Phenomenon of Bigfoot, Yeti, and the Other Ape Men, because I'm just interested in how these kind of all mix together and how parallel they are with one another. So right. I'm so thankful to have you on the show. But what we're going to do now is we are coming up on our break. So I'm kind of looking at my producer here. I'm thinking that we can cut a little early and then jump back in. Oh, we've got 3 minutes. Oh, well, no, let's do it. We're going to cut to a break because I want to jump on aliens and frequency. I want to talk about the electrical interferences. But then I also want to ask about something I found terribly fantastic, which was the alien clown connection. So for those of you who've ever contacted me and have coulrophobia or other unique fears, that's one of the things that I deal with in alternative psychology when I'm dealing with alien abductees. And so the fact that you've written about that, and I want to dig into that, but then also for those of you tuning in after the break, we're going to ask Mr. Dennett about the why and where. What are aliens searching for? Does it have to vary by species, metals, abductees? Is it a conspiracy? We don't know. It could be anything. So we're going to delve a little further into Preston Dennett's mind here on Mysteries of the Mind back after the break.
Sagan once wrote that the questioning mind needs to be instilled with both skepticism and wonder, for the universe is a pretty big place, filled with undelved mysteries, sciences, and life that we've barely begun to comprehend. Every month, Intrepid Magazine brings you both the wondrous and the skeptical. Intrepid Magazine focuses on science, metaphysics, UFOs, politics, conspiracies, and unexplained phenomenon, all offered up by Intrepid's cadre of writers and contributors comprised of a host of seasoned authors, pundits, and recognized names in their fields. The universe is indeed a big place, and where other magazines leave off, Intrepid Mag is just beginning. Subscribe to Intrepid Magazine today at www.intrepidmag.com. That's www.intrepidmag.com.
Imagine a place, beautiful, green, sloping mountains, and a rich, mysterious window into our ancient past. It's a culture the likes of which you won't find anyplace else. And while the place I'm describing is in Vermont, it's also the home of Inner Traditions, publishers of fine books on mind, body, and spirit for more than 3 decades. Inner Traditions are internationally recognized publishers of everything from occult to esoteric and spiritual books, as well as the leading authorities on alternative health, holistic healing, sacred sexuality, altered states of consciousness, and so much more. And frankly, it's not the kind of information you'll find just anywhere. Exploring the inner secrets of humanity requires thinking outside the box. And when it comes to Inner Traditions, the name says it all. All you have to do to learn more is visit innertraditions.com, and you can receive a free catalog that will tell you all about their latest books and newest authors. That's Inner Traditions and Bear & Company, publishers of fine esoteric books for more than 3 decades. Find them online at innertraditions.com.
For the thousands of wounded warriors returning from battle, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps wounded warriors translate their military experience to a civilian job. These extraordinary men and women bring more than just teamwork and inspiration to the workplace. They bring proven world-class job skills. And to ensure proper placement, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right job fit. Talented, skilled, and eager to get back to work, you have the opportunity to hire a seasoned veteran. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
You're listening to the Intrepid Radio program on the IPBN Alternative Talk Radio Network, Hudson, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, Minnesota.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
Welcome back, everyone, to Mysteries of the Mind. Thank you so much for tuning in. Me, the host, Sarah Soderlund, also known as Paranormal Sarah, and we are being joined tonight with the very awesome, very well-known, accomplished author and ufologist, Mr. Preston Dennett. Are you still there on the other end, Preston?
I'm here.
Whoa! Okay, great. During the break, sometimes it gets lonely, so I'm glad you stayed with us because we've had some really great interaction here on the social network sites. If you're joining me on Twitter or Facebook, just Google Paranormal Sarah. You're going to find out where we are at. And we're talking about aliens. Before the break, we talked about encounters, what the experiences are like, what your most bizarre encounters were. But some of the best questions that I loved from this week, and one that I've actually had myself, because in some of my experiences with people that come to me having strange phenomena happen, one of those patterns, one of those repetitive themes that we see is the electrical interference and this alien tying to frequencies and like, the TV sparking out and doing poltergeist things. And I'm just really interested in what you think, Mr. Dennett, about why there's such an electrical interference. Is it telepathy? Is it just the aliens exude this huge power, or is there some magnet in their UFO craft, or what is it about the electrical interference?
Right. Well, there's different ways you can approach this. Certainly, ETs are all about affecting electromagnetic instruments. When a UFO flies over, it's not at all unusual for a person's television or radios to buzz up. They're often seen hovering over telephone wires. It's also not at all unusual for them to stop vehicles and things like this. And it goes beyond that. I mean, there's a chapter in my latest book, Not From Here, about phone call from an alien is what it's called, because there's a number of people who've had extraordinary phone problems to the point where these ETs are actually calling them up on the phone. And I know how that sounds, but there's after the cases start stacking up, you can't ignore the evidence at some point. Typically, these involve people who the phone will ring and they answer the phone and we'll hear these clicks and buzzes, or sometimes voices speaking very quickly in a foreign language, things like that.
Now, see, this whole time I have been blaming T-Mobile for my click, click, clack, clacks and bad signal. You're telling me that people have alien encounters on their cell phone?
Yes, on their radios, their stereos. I mean, it happened to Whitley Strieber. He had an experience where his stereos started talking to him. And his wife was there. They verified it. They held this conversation, apparently, with these ET guys through their stereo. It completely freaked him out. He ended up calling the police. He had phone problems as well, same type of thing. So, yeah, they can communicate through all kinds of electromagnetic devices, and I think this is one of the ways they try and kind of leave a calling card, so to speak, or say, we're here. There's one guy I interviewed in upstate New York who had encounters his whole life, starting in childhood, the same sort of pattern you see, and he would often, he had missing time, which followed this really kind of strict pattern, where he would see a ball of light while driving, it would come close, and he would hear them in his mind saying, we're coming, and then he would have missing time. And
oh my gosh.
He was having all these phone problems, and just real quick, this happened again. This ball of light comes swooping towards his car. He hears them in his mind saying, we're coming, and his cell phone starts ringing. He looks at it, says no number. He's like, okay. He picks it up, and they say, we're coming, it's time. The time is now. And he slams the phone down, and boom, his car is covered with this beam of light, and he has missing time. So, yeah, they can communicate in all kinds of ways. And here's another weird thing. People who are contactees often make TVs fuzz up themselves. Their body energy, their electromagnetic field, their aura, if you will, seems to become, magnified or more powerful to the point where they can walk by a television or a radio and it fuzzes up. Or people often complain to me, I go through boxes of light bulbs. They just keep exploding on me. So, yeah, it changes a person's own bioelectric field having these experiences.
Man, okay. Now, see, just with that story alone, it makes me want to go into 500 different directions, because my producer and I were kind of sitting here talking about, as we're like nodding our head, when you talk about frequencies and this electrical interference, we get that a lot on our radio programs, on our podcasts. And I wanted to ask you, since you also do work and writings in paranormal phenomenon. So some people that tune into this program, we talk a lot about paranormal phenomenon, and one of those things is EVPs, or electronic voice phenomenon. So do you think that EVPs could be electrical interference from telepathic interdimensional aliens, or do you think it's spirits, or do you think it could be both? Or what do you think about that veil and what EVPs might really be?
Yeah, well, I think ghosts have the same sort of ability to a certain extent to affect electromagnetic instruments, making phones ring, lights go on and off, that sort of thing, and EVPs as well, for both ETs and ghosts. I think to a certain extent, people say, what are ETs? Are they extraterrestrials? Are they interdimensional beings? Are they time travelers? And so on. And my answer to that is, well, we're interdimensional beings. We have the ability to go out of body. We have a soul, and there are other dimensions. And I think the ETs have mastered that to a certain extent. But, this is a great question, because I get cases every now and then that where I can't really tell whether this is a ghost or an ET. There's a weird lead-through. There was one case, I was interviewing these ladies who are having this horrific haunting in their apartment in Van Nuys. And it was this typical kind of really dark haunting with objects moving, dark apparitions, weird odors, cold spots, the whole deal. And lots of witnesses. I called up the apartment manager, and she's like, oh, yeah, I saw one, too. And in the middle of this haunting, they ended up moving. It was so bad. In the middle of the haunting, they ran outside because there was this really loud buzzing noise. And lo and behold, there's this giant U-shaped craft covered with lights hovering right over their building. And
no way.
Yeah, they thought, oh, my God, this is, to them it was just another unexplained thing that they're trying to deal with. There is a connection. There was another guy I talked to, a radiologist up in Canyon Country, who had a Bigfoot encounter. And let me see, it was a Bigfoot encounter. He could hear this thing roaring. His dogs were going crazy. It seemed like it was coming right from the corner of his property. He could actually telepathically link up with this Bigfoot, which I thought at the time, oh, this is crazy. But no, it turns out, after I've researched Bigfoot, a lot of people report this kind of telepathic link. And he thought that was the end of his encounter. He went out there, saw some footprints, things like that. But the very next night, a UFO lands right in the same darn spot. And, he runs to get his glasses. He's nearsighted, and it takes off. And following that, he had this poltergeist breakout with objects moving, knocking noises, all kinds of things. His whole family was like, oh, my God. So, yeah, there is a connection. I can't quite figure it out. But
man, well, I want to also mention, because this is a question that I have that I'm always interested in asking people kind of your expertise and experience. We're talking about these recurring themes, these kind of synchronicities, if you will, whether it be the stacking of things like you would see in a poltergeist, but also that, people have with alien encounters or experiencers. But then you have these symbolisms or animal totem images or crazy dreams, restless leg syndrome. We kind of see these symptoms reoccurring through a lot of different paranormal phenomenon, but one that I think many people experience, and we kind of just say, oh, it's coincidence, or oh, it's serendipitous, or oh, it's nothing paranormal. But for me, I kind of always like to believe that alien phenomenon utilizes mathematics and numerology. And so that idea of seeing numbers, and we mentioned the missing time. You've mentioned that a few times with people who have alien encounters having these missing time experiences. But I've also wondered if, or how often those individuals also have that seeing the same number following them around, seeing the same repetitive. For me, it's 427 and 827. I see those everywhere. And I've gotten to where now I call it out So that my husband sees 316, which is kind of funny. And I always ask what people's numbers are, kind of like, have you had an alien encounter? And people always say, yeah, I always see this number. And what does that mean? And I don't know. I think it's subjective. But do you think there's anything to that synchronicity of missing time, but also being aware of certain numbers at certain moments?
I haven't really looked into that a whole lot. I mean, I've heard of the whole 1111 thing, which I've certainly experienced quite a bit. But I've had people tell me that they've received streams of numbers and things like that. But,
right.
But coincidences, oh yeah. My God, the coincidences are bizarre to the point where it feels like it's being set up almost at times. But I don't really I haven't done a whole lot of investigating into the number thing.
I love that, though, because that's an honest answer from you. And that just means I'll be looking for it later in one of your future publications. But something that I had mentioned before the break that kind of got people's skin crawling, for me as a forensic psychologist, I work a lot with fears and phobias. And I think it's interesting, a lot of times people who have that alien abduction experience, they have certain anxieties, certain things related to, it could be agoraphobia, it could be the tight spaces, it could be medical examinations that are somehow kind of seeping into those repressed thoughts that they've had of those traumatic alien abductions. But you had mentioned one in an article that was published that I thought was fantastic, and I'm hoping that you can expand on it a little bit here, about the alien clown connection. So for those people who suffer from coulrophobia or the fear of clowns, and we're talking fear, people, not just they creep you out, John Gacy style, but actually makes it difficult to function when you see that painted face and crazy wig. Tell us about the alien clown connection.
Right. This is so bizarre. This is another chapter in my book, Not From Here, which I wanted to include because you don't hear a lot about it. And this is kind of related to screen memories, I think, but at the same time a little bit different. So what I found, and this kept turning up, that people who are having experiences have this intense fear of clowns. And this is, I kept running across it, and then I read a quote from Bud Hopkins, who says, oh yeah, this keeps turning up in my cases, and other researchers have confirmed this as well. And I found a couple of people were able to point to specific incidents in their childhood where these ETs came into their room dressed up, physically dressed up as clowns. And I think what's going on here is that they're trying to not so much disguise themselves as maybe sort of reduce the fear factor or come in as something that children allegedly love or are, interested in.
Right.
And what's happening is it's leaving people with this dread fear of clowns. And it's so common that it's definitely one of the questions I ask experiencers, people who think they may have an encounter, how do they feel about clowns? And, I've got a bunch of cases like this. One lady, she told me that as a child, she saw this ET in the living room, and she was looking at it through these glass doors, and she didn't become frightened because it had this orange wig on and a clown face. And she always kind of knew what it was, and later on in life she had full-on encounters and realized, this was the same face. And so this turns up a lot. Another lady I interviewed from New Jersey, she was sitting in her car with her best friend as a child, 8, 9, 10 years old, around that age, maybe a little older. And suddenly this was in the, I believe it was the evening, her friend suddenly falls asleep, can't wake up, is like unconscious. And looking up, she sees this craft moving down the street. And this is a busy street, and now there are no cars on it. This is another weird pattern that turns up. The cars suddenly disappear. She jumps out of the car and is following this craft down the street. And it just kind of moves off, and that's it. And she doesn't think much of it. I think it may have been, closer encounter than she remembers, because there were some weird elements to it. She saw other people who were wearing dark wraparound sunglasses at night, which to me sounds like E.T., but she wasn't really quite ready to go there. But she says, Preston, I had this weird experience with a kid, a very young child, 4 or 5 years old, and I don't know if it's related, but I'll bring it up because I feel like it is. She says, this harlequin came into her bedroom, and it had little bells on it, had the full velvet purple costume. It was beautiful and shiny, and all the silk and all the bangles, it was all there, and it was really scared her, because the next thing she knows, she's lying on this table, and she's being examined, and there's a knife or some sort of surgical instrument, and they cut her. And I'm like, gosh, this is the sort of thing I've heard before. So yeah, this clown thing is outrageous. And it's not only clowns. These guys dress up in all kinds of costumes. Cowboy hats, pinstripe suits. It's really strange. But a lot of cases like this.
Man. So to me, this is just fantastic because, one, I would like to think that aliens are maybe have a sense of humor, and they're doing this just to see, like, we're going to do a double whammy on this chick. We're going to dress up like a clown and abduct her in the night. But on all serious note, though, it really is kind of a double whammy. But as the psychologist in me, I love this concept that either these highly intelligent creatures that are just wanting to know more about us are saying, we need to be, our image is telepathically on a collective consciousness, a scary one. We need to change it to something more friendly. What's a friendly image for children, or what's a childhood, happy place? And that they would go to clowns, which we need to telepathically let them know that Stephen King has ruined that for a lot of us, and
right.
And so give them a new message here. But that kind of leads me into, and I know we've only got 10 minutes left, but it leads me into, you said that they wear hats, and in paranormal phenomenon, we have this top hat figure, or the man with the top hat, or Slender Man kind of images, those long gangly arms and open hinged mouths. Do you feel like, and this is kind of just a Paranormal Sarah question, recently, I think it's been in the last 10 years that I've seen it, these long, they're like these long little stick figures. They look like a Gumby is what comes to my mind when I see them. But it was like on Fact or Faked and the National Geographic's Most Terrifying Alien Encounters. And they look like Gumby. They look like all of a sudden this thing just sprouts legs and it starts walking across an open field. And it's been this reoccurring image. Do you feel like maybe aliens aren't humanoids, that they have a completely different form and they're just shapeshifters? Or, is it a common theme that we're projecting our unconscious to what an alien should look like? Or what does an alien really look like, I guess, is my question. What does an alien really look like, Dennett?
Right. Well, there are some accounts of shapeshifting, and it's maddening, honestly, the number of different types of ETs people see. I'm going to say probably 70% of the people I've talked to describe some version of what you would call the grays, ranging in height from 3 to 5 feet, with the large head, dark eyes, white skin, that sort of thing. And beyond that, I got a number of accounts of praying mantis type, which people describe as looking very much like a giant grasshopper or praying mantis. And that ranges in height from 7 feet, 6 or 7 feet, upwards to 15 feet in one outlying case, where the guy said their eyeballs were as big as his head.
Now, those are what Steven Spielberg, I think, when he mentions briefly his alien encounters, thinking it was the mantis kind of insect-looking creature,
right,
which inspired that the show that's now on TV, and I've not followed it. Somebody on Social Network will kick in and tell me. The Fallen? Is it The Fallen? Or The Falling Sky? Falling Skies! Is that the one? That's the one. Where they're very insect-like. Have you seen an insect-like one in your encounters? What do you encounter?
I haven't. Not the praying mantis type. And, I also get accounts of human-looking ETs, which I think raises serious questions about human origins, and a few scattered reptilian cases. But there's also this catch-all category of robots and little dwarves and just all kinds. I think the human form is kind of universal, and yes, this is what ETs look like, very much like us, with eyes and arms and so on. As far as me, I never had any encounters growing up, like I said, but as soon as I started investigating this stuff, I started having some sightings. And there was, I've had some weird dreams with gray types, ETs, a few out-of-body type experiences as well, where I thought I saw gray type ETs. And there was one incident where, and this is when I was doing a lot of lucid dreaming and this sort of thing, where I would be in bed, and you would think I was asleep, but no, I was not. I'm aware of the room and what's going on. And I was doing that one morning when, honest to God, I felt a cat walking across my bed. I don't have a cat. So it obviously alarmed me, and I opened my eyes because I was kind of pretty much already awake, though in that weird sort of meditative state. And turned my head, and I thought I saw this really, really skinny figure. I mean, just impossibly thin. Couldn't be a human.
Those are the ones that freak me out. I can't handle those.
Oh, and the next thing I know, this thing darts. I mean, moves so fast, almost, insect-like, I guess would be a good way of saying it. Just darts around, out of the room, around the corner, and, I should have gotten up, should have jumped up. I normally would have, but that's not what I did. And this is another thing I've certainly read about and interviewed people who they don't react in the way you would think you would.
Right. I would sit there and pee my pants, which obviously is not what I, if I saw something like that, I'd be like,
my heart went bump, 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 and I turned and went back to sleep. That's what I did. So maybe, that could be one. I don't normally bring it up because I'm a little bit ambivalent about it, but I don't know. I think that they're aware of me. Every now and then I get emails from people who were told by their contacts to contact me. I once asked this lady to go on public access TV. She said, okay, I'll do it. Right before she's supposed to go on TV, she has this encounter, and the ETs did not want her to do it. So, but I think they're aware of certainly more than people realize what's going on.
Crazy. Well, and here we are at the last 5 minutes of our show, and I've still got at least 17 questions that I want to ask you. So I do want to tell you, I've just loved having you on the show, and if I have to think of one more question to leave out on, I guess it's that question that I've had most frequently this week on social networking, which is ask Preston Dennett why they're here. Are they trying to make hybrid species? Are they drilling for gold? Is it a government conspiracy? Are they kids with on an anthill? What do you think? Why are aliens visiting Earth?
Well, yes, and yes. I think they have multiple agendas. There's, in my book, Not From Here, there's a chapter on UFO and mining. There's a bunch of cases where, yes, they are taking metals from us. I think definitely the hybridization program is for real. I've gotten a number of cases, and that was before Bud Hopkins came out with, his Intruders book. So I think that's definitely one of their agendas. But I have to tell you, when someone is taken on board a craft, the most common thing is that they're physically examined. These ETs know a lot about the human body. They're very interested in us for some reason. But the second most common thing is being given messages, and this falls into 3 categories. I think this is really the main alien agenda. Yes, a lot of them are scientists and tourists and things like this, but they're coming here with an agenda, and the agenda is teaching people about, one, alternative energy sources. That's very common. People are often taken to see the engine room and told about how there's electromagnetic free energy that you can make motors, and people come back trying to build these things. I've got a number of cases like that. A number of cases where people are told about alternative healing or psychic development, and that's very common. A lot of people come away from these experiences profoundly psychic. I'm doing channeling or hands-on healing or things like this. And also very, very common are warnings of environmentalism. By that I mean nuclear proliferation, global warming, overpopulation, pollution, these sort of things. So I think this speaks very much towards the alien agenda. This is what they're concentrating on. They're trying to wake people up. And that's what I think their main agenda is, honestly.
Well, I guess that leaves our listeners who may have tuned in thinking that aliens could be a fearful phenomenon to maybe more of a positive one. They're humanitarian aliens, and they might just be. You might come back from your abduction with psychic powers.
I don't think they're coming here to scare people. We got nothing like, sadism or sadistic type behavior, which certainly we have on our planet. It would be so much easier to prove humanity is hostile than these ETs. Not that
we just need to get that message to not be a clown, right?
I mean, I know people do have traumatic encounters. Don't get me wrong, but my book UFO Healings covered 100 cases of people who were actually healed by ETs, and I found probably 100 cases since then. I'm putting together another book on that. So there's a definite positive angle to this.
That's crazy to me. It's kind of exciting. For me, I've not had a terrible amount of experiences, definitely not as many as you or some of the others out there I've come in contact with, but Dr. Leo Sprinkle, that's what he had written with his book Soul Samples. He said that the majority of the people who come back from their abduction experience, they have an enlightening experience, that they have more of a focus and motivation and healing and psychic intuition, and so maybe it's not all bad. So I like that.
I'm very hopeful. When I first got involved in this, boy, I was shook up, and I flip-flopped quite a bit, and I'm still, not entirely happy with the whole abduction phenomenon. It's not nice, being picked up without your permission and laid out on a table and so on. No, I'm not sure I want that to happen to me. But I don't think they're not here to scare us. They're not here to hurt us. They're not here to take over our planet. They've been here for thousands of years. They're very concerned about our use of nuclear power, and that's what brought them in very large numbers. The modern age of UFOs coincides exactly with the atomic age.
Well, for those who have been listening, Preston, I can't thank you enough. We've had Mr. Preston Dennett on tonight as our guest, and hopefully have him back again soon. And if you want to know more, go to Preston Dennett, that's DENNET.weebly.com, and there you are going to find just an extensive list of all of his books. I have a few. I need to go out and get some of the others, because things like Bigfoot, Mysteries, Legends, Unexplained Phenomenon of Bigfoot, Other Ape Men. We didn't get to that. We didn't get to the aliens and mysteries of Minnesota. That's where I live. I want to know what you got there. And even cattle mutilations and other questions. So for those of you who join me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, that sort of thing, send me your questions. But more importantly, contact PrestonDennett.weebly.com directly. Is there anything here in these last few seconds, Preston, that you'd like to throw out there?
Well, I think we covered it pretty well.
I think that you did a great job. You're so well spoken, and again, I cannot thank you enough.
One thing I would say is that we're trending towards open contact with ETs. We're having kind of an escalation of contact, I think. We're trending towards disclosure on part of the government. We have the crash saucers, we have the alien bodies, we have the alien technology. We could solve the environmental crisis, the energy crisis, and the economic crisis pretty much overnight with just police and all this stuff. And that's what's going to happen. What a lot of contactees are saying, that we're in for a very different future than we see now. So that's the message I would
get ready. All right. Well, with that, we are out. And for those of you join me next week. And thank you again, Preston. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.